Hello, BookTube. Some of you may know the BookTube channel CriminOlly. Some of you may have fallen into his clutches. CriminOlly has come up with a Satanic challenge, the CriminOlly Challenge, where you are to read 100 books you already own before you buy even one more book. I do not understand this. It is the life purpose of every bookworm to mindlessly accumulate more books than they could possibly read in 10 lifetimes, and then leave the mess behind for your grieving relatives when you croak. That is, I thought, well known. And it prompted me to make the Steve Saintly challenge of buying 100 books before you read one of your own. I think both are exaggerations. But nevertheless, it's been fun. It's been fun to watch Ollie adhere to his own challenge and also work in a whole bunch of exceptions. And it's also been a hilarious amount of fun to watch a whole bunch of booktubers come up with all kinds of legalistic mumbo-jumbo technicality reasons why this book still counts even though I'm doing the book buying ban. That's been hilarious amounts of fun. You all want to go to a used bookstore and buy things. You know you do. But I was watching Michael K Vaughan, broadcasting from stately Vaughan Manor. And one of the ways that he's adhering to the CriminOlly challenge is to poke around on his Kindle. He did a video, I'll leave a link to it, he did a video, sorry for the galloping noise, I believe that's the laundry. I wonder if something's alive in there. I didn't think anything alive was here except me and the bean. One of the ways that Michael decided to adhere to the Satanic CriminOlly challenge was to go poking around in the bowels of his Kindle. What kind of stuff do I have on here that I maybe haven't looked at in a long time and need to look at? And I was watching that and I was thinking, this is a really good idea for a tag. So I am hereby weaponizing his tag. Because, of course, Michael is the mentalo to my negative man. So I went looking myself for the same thing. Now, I have a Kindle. I have a Kindle Paperwhite and I have a Kindle Oasis, and I recognize all the positive aspects of them. I think they're great. But for me, at least at the end of 2021, for me, the e-reading, I do an enormous amount of e-reading. I prefer it. I love it. But for me, the perfect venue for that is an iPad. The Kindle or the Nook, the Barnes & Noble Nook or the Kobo app on my iPad. For me, that is the way to do it. I think that's different for everybody. Some of you, for instance, have reported to me over the years that the backlit, the blue light backlight of an iPad really does a number on your eyes, especially if, as a lot of you do, you've been staring at a backlit screen all day long for work. Kindles, of course, are legendarily easy on the eyes. They're e-ink. They're not a backlit screen at all. And I understand that completely, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on me. I don't notice any kind of strain coming from reading backlit stuff. Some of you have also said you appreciate your Kindles not only for the e-ink, but also for the lack of distraction. A Kindle will only read. That's all you can do on a Kindle is read. And people, so many of you over the years, have said that it was a complete game changer for you, that you went from distracted, unproductive, and unenjoyable reading to suddenly reading like crazy and loving it, looking forward to it. Because on your Kindle, that's all you can do. It's completely comfortable, it's completely convenient, and it's also non-distracting. I understand that, I hear that completely, but it's possible that I have a little bit more self-control than an average reader would. I am not tempted, is what I'm trying to say. I am not tempted when I'm on my iPad to go looking at anything else. I set aside reading time on the iPad, and that's all I do, is read. I'm not checking Twitter or Instagram every 5 seconds when I'm reading. And yet, the connectivity is a draw for me. It is an attraction for me when reading on an iPad. Because a lot of times when I'm reading on an iPad, I'm reading a book that I am annotating for review. And when I'm doing that, it helps me able to jump right over to Wikipedia or YouTube or whatever to double check on something in order to inform a note, in order to inform marginalia or annotation. In other words, no judgment one way or another. I still love e-reading, same as the people who love their Kindles. I just do it on my iPad instead. But I thought that Michael's video still had the bones of a great tag. My final weaponized tag of 2021, the What Lurks on My Kindle tag, where you go through your Kindle or your Kobo or your iPad or whatever, and you pick out a few books that you haven't read and tell us about them. Why are they there? What originally prompted you to download them? What do you think about them? Do you think you'll get to them anytime soon? That sort of thing. And for me, the What Lurks on My Kindle tag has to start with rereads. Now that's technically against the rules because we want to talk about stuff that you haven't got to yet. But I do a lot of rereading, especially this time of year, and I have some rereads on here for the end of the year. Like for instance, Shakespeare. I'll be rereading The Merchant of Venice. The cover shows a scene from the famous monologue, "Hath not a Jew biceps? Hath not a Jew delts?" So I'll be rereading The Merchant of Venice. I love it, and I love to read it anyway. Oh no, don't tell me this thing is frozen. No, it hasn't frozen. It's behaving, just slowly. It's a very murky day, so it's behaving slowly. Another reread that I'm going to do here is Rudyard Kipling. There's a collection of his long letters that he wrote while he was traveling at the end of the 19th century. It's collected here as Letters of Travel, and I haven't read some of those in forever and ever. So, there's bound to be lots of stuff in there that's like new. But there's also, if I recall correctly, there are a bunch of things on here that are, in fact, new. There's one more thing on here that isn't new. And it's prompted in part by CriminOlly, in fact, entirely by CriminOlly. Because one of the things that he's reading on his channel are all of these really dumb 1980s post-apocalyptic cannibals everywhere adventure stories where the hero works their way through a blighted post-apocalyptic landscape. Those were... he's reading Mac Bolan as well, and the Gore novels, but he's reading a lot of those as well, these post-apocalyptic type things that were spurred. I mean, there's a real-world origin. He's right about this. There's a real-world origin for impetus for the plot lines of all of Mac Bolan, for the plot lines of all of these post-apocalyptic things. They all take different twists and turns, but they're all born of the height of the fear of thermonuclear war, which I would argue hit its peak in the early 1980s. And I've been watching his series, and it reminded me of the one series like that I have read and enjoyed. It's by the author going under the name of Craig Sargent. You would actually know the author's name. And it's the Last Ranger series, and this is number 8, The Cutthroat Cannibals. And there is Martin Stone with his pit bull Excalibur and his Jeep and his motorcycle that never runs out of gas, his weapons that never run out of ammunition, his pit bull that never seems to need feeding. And these are absolutely hilarious. They're hilarious. They're written with just incredibly over-the-top gore and sex. The main character, Martin Stone, is forever encountering squadrons, villages, whole countries of hideously transformed mutants and cannibals. But always in the middle of every one of those villages, there's a Playboy pinup who's very happy with meeting him because he's beautiful too. So that's the other reread that I'm doing on my list. But then a lot of things here will be new. Like, for instance, this is an ebook collection of all of the stories from Astonishing Stories over decades. And there are a whole bunch of names in here that I know. Asimov is in almost every issue. Kuttner's in Alfred Bester. But there are a whole bunch of names here that I don't know. Whole bunch of stories by authors that I don't think ever came to anything, or that as authors you'd have to be a much more granular fan of science fiction than I am to even know. So most of this is going to constitute new reading. So that counts. And then there's this little thing, is Why Marx Was Right by Terry Eagleton, the bloviating thought critic, the Lionel Trilling-esque thought critic. I've read some of his little books. I've never read this one. It's off to a roaring start because, of course, Marx wasn't right about anything. So Why Marx Was Right is going to be a roller coaster ride. And I'm sure it won't take long, not only because Eagleton never writes any long books, but also because, to put it mildly, he doesn't write demanding prose at all. Then his next one is by Scott Mariani. Maybe some of you in the UK will know this author. I don't at all. This is The Crusaders Cross. looks like a kind of He-Man thriller thing, only set in the present day, not Martin Stone in the 1980s, but in the present day. And he seems like a dog lover. So this will probably, judging by the title, this will probably be one of those historically illiterate Da Vinci Code things where some element from the past is exerting a pull on the present. I don't know. I'll find out. This next one is short. Much like the Eagleton, this is a novella by James Corey, by the writing team of James Corey, who just wrapped up their Expanse series. They just finished the last book in that series, and it was terrific. But this is a novella, The Gods of Risk. This is an Expanse novella. There are a few of these. There are a few Expanse novellas scattered throughout the timeline of the Expanse universe that I haven't read. I've never read any of the novellas, but I love the universe. I love the Expanse novels. So that's lurking on my Kindle, and I will gladly get to it. Then there's this thing. This is a huge oversight. It's a short biography that I should have read. This is Peter Ackroyd's life of Alfred Hitchcock. That I just it's a director I like. It's an author I love, and yet I've never actually got around to this book. No idea why. But these are all for the end of the year. These are all for times coming up. And of course, since Christmas is coming up, you want a Christmas novel. And I chose $1 Million Christmas Proposal by Lucy Monroe, an old Harlequin Presents. Lovely understated cover there. Again, an hour's read, not any trouble at all. And then maybe a local book. Maybe a local book would be good. I believe that... I believe I have a local novel in here somewhere. Well, no, not local in the location sense, but certainly this thing by Dana Mentink is Pause for Love. That creature on the cover looks kind of familiar. It's a dog lover's romance. These things also take an hour to read. They're not anything. I'm sure that I have this for the cover. And then we'll do one more. For instance, there's something like this. That's lurking on my Kindle for a reason. Oh my God, are you going to show up? No? No? No. Wow. Okay, the machine froze up. Well, that doesn't happen with printed books, does it? but we've seen enough. Are you going to behave yourself? No? Wow, you wouldn't believe this. I'm seeing visuals on this thing that I've never seen before in 2 years of using it. All because I'm making a video. That's why that's happening, because I'm making a video. But I was moving on to something else, wasn't I? I was going to show you one more thing. I was going to show you one more item. Oh, yes. This thing, which is brand new. Here, let me get. I think it's brand new. Let me get the cover for you. You will be much better at manipulating these things than I am when you do your version of this tag. This is Archer Mayer. This is Presumption of Guilt, a Joe Gunther novel that I haven't got to yet. And I heard a lot about Archer Mayer because he's a Vermont author, so I heard about it when I was up in Vermont. So there you go. Those are the just a brief sample of what lurks on my Kindle, of stuff that's on my Kindle that I haven't got around to yet. And I urge you to do the same thing. If you're watching this video and you have stuff that's unread on your Kindle or your Nook or your Kobo or whatever, then feel free to consider yourself tagged to call up 8 or 9 titles and show them to me. And because it's me, if you do this, I also want to hear about the tech. I want to hear about the tech itself. Okay? This, for instance, is a 4th generation iPad in a rubber case that wraps all around it, and that is fantastic, and the like of which I cannot find for sale these days. I call it the Rad Pad, and it is something you could hurl this across the room and not hurt the iPad at all. iPad still has plenty of storage left on it, so... But when you do your What Lurks on My Kindle tag, I also want to hear about your Kindle. When did you get it? How much do you use it? What item is it specifically? What is the tech specifically? But anyway, there you go. I'll leave a link to Michael's video down below, and feel free to call up what lurks on your Kindle and talk about it. Thank you, BookTube.